This is the time that we've been spending with our good friend, Dr. Dennis Norem from Mercy Health, discussing the current COVID-19 situation. We've been doing this all pandemic long. Dr. Norem, we are grateful once again you're back with us. And how was Thanksgiving?
Well, I survived. I think my stomach is still distended, though.
Oh, uncomfortable.
I think there's a huge apple pie that I just finished off last night, and I can still feel it there. But,
nice. Yeah, you and me both. Yeah, so we were kindred spirits last night. I walked by it sitting on the counter. I thought, well, it would be a shame if a giant slice of that were to go to waste. Right. So where can I find a plate?
Absolutely. And, you got to put a little whipped cream on the top to make sure it goes down well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You got to have of course, the dessert lubricant.
You guys whipped cream or a Cool Whip house?
Well, actually, it was a Ready Whip in a can, which is not my favorite, but it's a little less messy than the Cool Whip. Okay. I usually prefer Cool Whip, and my son, we gave away our ice cream to my son, so I couldn't use the ice cream.
See, Cool Whip in our house, extra creamy this year.
Oh
yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah, we're living on the edge, man. It's pretty nice.
I knew you're doing well.
Well, I don't like to brag, but yes, it was extra creamy. All right, on to the topic at hand. Dr. Fauci's been busy talking to people. He says we could be looking at surge upon surge of COVID-19 in the weeks ahead.
Yes, it's very difficult to know what's going to happen after this Thanksgiving weekend with people traveling a lot more. Families getting together, even though much smaller gatherings. But there's this big concern about a huge surge, and hopefully that won't happen, but the next couple of weeks will certainly let us know.
The term flatten the curve was used quite a bit when we started this pandemic. That phrase has just trailed off. Did we get the wrong impression of what flatten the curve meant? I think whenever we saw the flatten the curve, it was eventually the line was going back down. Did we just maybe not make it go up as exponentially as it could have? Did we flatten the curve ever the first time we went through this lockdown situation?
Oh, absolutely. If we hadn't done anything, I think we could look back at the Spanish flu and see that if we hadn't really done any kind of distancing, shutting things down, we would have had probably 1 million deaths by now. And we would have, totally overwhelmed the healthcare system. So clearly we flattened the curve. Unfortunately, we are still seeing the curve going up, probably not as fast. I did see a quick little article that England, who had another shutdown, they've reduced their rates by about 30%. So doing these types of things does make a difference, but it all depends on the locality and what's going on and obviously what people are doing. But we have definitely flattened the curve overall. I think there's no question.
You mentioned Britain, and I'm looking at a piece here this morning from the Associated Press. They said yesterday, the British authorities said yesterday, they've secured 2 million more doses of a promising vaccine as it gears up to launch within days. Britain's most ambitious inoculation program in decades. They've agreed to buy more than 350 million doses of vaccines from 7 different producers should they prove effective as it prepares to vaccinate as many of the country's 67 million people as possible. Now, for people going, why 350 million? Well, it's not one dose, though, is it, Dr. Norem? Aren't all of them that they're putting out so far talking about is a 2-level plan?
Yes. The ones here in the United States, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and I think Johnson & Johnson is close to applying. Those are all 2-dose. I have not seen anyone proposing a single-dose vaccine, although there's probably some company out there that may down the road. But I think all the ones that are close to approval are all 2 doses.
Is this? I guess is this something that is noteworthy? The fact that they have gone all in with about 350 million doses of vaccines ordered. It seems they've left themselves some wiggle room. Should something come back in a clinical trial that it wasn't as effective, they can end their deal. But as it stands now, that's a lot to put on the line.
Well, absolutely, and certainly if all of those vaccines that they've ordered are effective, obviously they can sell those or give those away or get them to other countries that need them in a hurry. So I think it's probably a wise move to order and have a lot more doses in the pipeline from different manufacturers just in case one doesn't work out, one has a bad side effect, or the company simply can't supply it.
They said that they thought frontline healthcare workers and nursing home residents would be the first to be vaccinated, followed by older people, starting with those over the age of 80. Their plan is then to work down the age and risk groups until everyone 18 and older has been inoculated.
Well, that sounds sensible. My only concern is I think we should have a little more priority for working people, people that are in essential jobs. I understand the concern about older people, but many older people are not working. They can stay home. They can quarantine themselves. There's a lot of younger, healthy people that can't. They're in essential jobs and have to go to work. Otherwise, none of us would have any food, clothing, whatever. So I understand what they're saying, but I would like to see a little more emphasis on the essential workers.
I don't know how in touch you are still with the office where you worked, but are you guys getting ready to distribute? Are there machinations going on in the backgrounds of where we're going to store? Is there a list of people that we're going to call? Are you guys getting ready to administer vaccines to anybody?
That's a good question, and I honestly don't have an answer. I'll have to do a little checking around and see if I can get you some information by next week.
Okay.
Yeah, because according to at least the British here, hospitals in England have been told they could receive the first doses of the Pfizer shot as early as the week of December 7th if it receives approval. U.S. vaccination program also hopes to begin inoculating some Americans, it says, in December. So they're not real specific on their details either.
No, and I think in this country, I believe December 10th is the date for the FDA to look at Pfizer for emergency approval. And the other thing about the Pfizer vaccine is they're working with CVS and Walgreens for distribution. They're not part of the warp speed distribution system. So it's a little unclear how that's exactly going to work.
Is there a scenario where multiple vaccines get approved and distributed throughout the world?
Oh, absolutely. The hope is that multiple vaccines will be approved as they will be effective and safe, and we'll be able to have multiple choices throughout the world. Obviously, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have special storage considerations, which makes it very difficult for them to be distributed in many, many countries that just don't have the kind of storage capacity they need. Whereas the AstraZeneca and I think the Johnson & Johnson vaccines are a little more traditional, a lot easier to store and distribute.
Yeah, the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, can be stored at conventional refrigerator temperatures, making its distribution much simpler and cheaper than its main rivals. But it says some doctors and scientists have questioned gaps in their reported results. They report their vaccine appears to be 62% effective in people who received 2 doses, 90% effective when volunteers were given a half dose followed by a full dose.
Yeah, that was very interesting to see that, and apparently that was a mistake. For some reason, the initial doses given to some of the patients in the study were only half what it was intended to be. And they're trying to explain now why would your results be better if you got half a dose than a full dose as opposed to getting 2 full doses. Well, one of the explanations I saw was that the people that received the half dose were all under the age of 55. And they thought maybe that skewed their results a little bit as they would have a better immune response than the older patients. And the other possibility is maybe their dosing is too high and there's some kind of a mechanism that made it less effective, but they're still looking at that.
How does a tainted sample base like that happen in a study of this importance?
Good question.
Okay.
I think they've got a lot of, as we like to say, a lot of explaining to do.
Okay.
As how that happened. I think there were almost 5,000 of the total, something in the neighborhood of 30,000 who only got half a dose the first time around.
Yeah, they said the half dose was administered because of a manufacturing error.
Yeah, that's a little disconcerting. So there's going to be some more information need to come out on that.
I've been pretty blown away, though, by reading some of the effectiveness reporting here. Pfizer and BioNTech, 95%. You got Moderna at 95%. All of these numbers are extremely high, and I have not been reading anything about really negative side effects.
No, absolutely. Again, as you remember, the Pfizer and Moderna are the new type of vaccines using the messenger RNA proteins, and it theoretically would seem that those would have been less likely to cause side effects, but we didn't know going into the studies, but it really has turned out they seem to be very clean.
Yeah, most common adverse reactions, injection site pain, which basically you get from, anything that you're injected. I mean, after a while, that kind of stings a little bit. But, you got injection site pain. What else is on this list? Fatigue, myalgia, arthralgia, headache, and redness at the injection site.
Well, it seems, too, that from what people are saying, that the immune response is more significant than maybe the older style vaccines anyway. And this is kind of analogous to the newer shingle shot. If anybody's had the series of the two new shingle shots, I myself had a bit of a reaction. I never usually react to immunizations. And the reps tell me that that's because it just generates a better immune response.
Yeah, I can recall having the shingle shots as being the most post-shot painful shots I've ever had. For me, it was basically 2 weeks of, at one point, I could hardly lift an arm up. So I can chalk that up to a good immune response?
Well, partly, and partly could have been where the needle ended up inadvertently. But what I noticed was almost a flu-like feeling for 24 hours. Achy, almost the myalgias, a little bit of a headache, and it was about 24 hours and it went away. And talking to patients, they also complained a lot more than they would have with a routine flu shot or some of the other routine tetanus, those type of things. So I think it indicates that it gives a little bit better immune response than the older style vaccines.
I don't think you need numbers to let anybody know that the positive cases are surging. I think we all know one or two extra people in our lives that have picked up the coronavirus in the last 2 weeks or so. Is there any concern, or maybe this is that people should be thinking this? But if you had it, if you're positive, it's been 2 weeks and you feel good now, are you essentially immune? Or, I mean, should people feel a little bit, are you concerned with people feeling a little too invincible if they've gone through this? How should the same care be put into socially distanced and mask wearing for people that have had it and recovered?
They should continue mask wearing and social distancing. Obviously, if they're just getting over it, they're probably immune. We don't know for how long. And as you've seen, there's been a few case reports of people getting it for the second time. There's still a little bit of concern about infectivity and transmission in people who are resolving their infection. So I think people need to feel good about the fact they got through it and they're over it if they've had a mild case, obviously, and not been in the hospital. But they need to continue to mask and social distance. That's still very important.
And then one follow-up about past cases. I mean, this has been around for a year now, at least 9 months here in the States. Do we have any more information about the long-term effects? I mean, some people have been, cured for, almost a year now of coronavirus. Do they have any negative effects still?
I think we're seeing these, what they call them, long haulers. I think there's this expression out. And there's a small number of people, and even people who are relatively healthy who had a fairly severe case who are still struggling a bit. I think this is going to become sort of a post-COVID syndrome. Still no good data on why some people are still complaining of headache, fatigue, weakness, those kind of things. You can kind of understand the pulmonary aspects. I mean, it attacks the lungs, and there are patients who are struggling a bit in terms of their pulmonary status, and that makes sense because if you have a really severe case, you have inflammation, scarring, it could permanently affect the lungs. But there seem to be a lot of other symptoms associated with post-COVID that are just not quite clear why. So that is really going to take some more study. Fortunately, it appears to be a small percentage of patients, but it is significant.
All right. So in a nutshell, we could be looking at surge after surge, and it'll be interesting to see what happens post-Thanksgiving holiday. And we're right on the cusp of vaccines being earmarked for actually distributing to the public.
Yes, and again, this is this holiday season, the vaccines. I mean, we're kind of look at this as kind of the perfect storm, and hopefully this will get us through the next couple weeks and months, and maybe we'll finally get to the other side of this thing.
Outstanding. That would be great. Dr. Norem, as always, we appreciate the time and the expertise. And since we haven't put this behind us yet, we'll look forward to chatting with you again next Monday if you're up for it.
Absolutely, guys. We'll see you then.